Welcome back to the virtual Free From Festival. I'm Naomi Devlin. I completely forgot to introduce myself in the last session, so I'm doing it now. I'm a nutritionist and chef, and I teach gluten-free cookery, and I'm here to support the Free From Festival today. And I hope you've been really enjoying having a look around in the marketplace. There's so much delicious stuff to eat there, and amazing medicinal stuff. It's really a wonderful collection of producers. We have got a most wonderful chef and cookbook writer for you today. It's Emma Hatcher. She's a Leith trained cook, and she specializes in gut health, particularly in low FODmap, which is IBS friendly, and she is going to tell you all about that. She's making some pumpkin energy balls today, and we're going to talk about, hopefully, about her books and about her work and about what makes her tick. So without further ado, let's meet Emma.
Hello. Hi, Ian. Can you hear me okay? Perfect. Well, thank you very much for the lovely introduction. So my name's Emma. As you said, I'm a cook, an author, and I am all about the low FODmap diet. So to give you a bit of kind of a history, I have had a sensitive gut for as long as I can remember. I was diagnosed officially with IBS. Officially, sounds very weird to say like that, but I was diagnosed at 14 with IBS, which is something that every teenager wants. I was told to cut out gluten first off, and it helped for a couple of years before my symptoms came back. And I was having those really horrible symptoms that no one wants to talk about, really bad stomach aches, constipation, diarrhea, very sexy things. But I think we should normalize them and we should talk about them. So cut out gluten for a couple of years, helped my symptoms a bit. Unfortunately, then they came back, was told to try cutting out coffee, dairy, sort of one thing after another. It all helped a bit, but kind of wasn't really getting anywhere. I then went off to university. My second year of university, I was told about things got worse again, and I was told about the low FODmap diet. And it had been around for a while. It was sort of researched out in Australia and came over to the UK a couple of years ago, well, quite a few years ago now. But no one had really heard about it. So I sat down with the dietitian and she said, we've heard about this brilliant diet. We think it might work for you. And I had no idea where to get started. No one I knew sort of knew about it at all. And I was handed this very uninspiring sort of 2-page leaflet that said, these are the massive long list of foods that you can't eat. And I went home and I panicked and I thought, where do I start? What do I do first? Kind of looking at all the cupboards and thinking, God, how does this even work? And then I started blogging about it. So I started blogging about the recipes. I was at Loughborough University at the time, big sports university. So everyone was obviously very interested in health and fitness anyway. So kind of started blogging more about the healthier side of things, and then was blogging about the low FODmap recipes. And so many people got in touch, and it turned out as soon as you talk about it, it's one of those things, no one wants to talk about their gut, no one wants to talk about IBS. And it's amazing the amount of people that say, oh, actually my mum suffers as well, or my brother or friends. So I started, blogging more and more recipes. So it's going to get into a long story. Started blogging more and more recipes, and then a publisher got in touch and said, would you like to write a cookbook? Would you come and pitch to us? Came and pitched, and thankfully they thought I was all right. And the cookbook led from there. And I now, I'm full-time freelance, and I create content and recipes for brands kind of specializing in the gut health, low FODmap space. That was my big intro. I hope that made sense. Obviously questions throughout, and Naomi can let me know what they are. Today, I would really like to make for you some pumpkin energy balls. So pumpkin energy balls, pumpkin energy bites, happiness balls, whatever you'd like to call them. I think we're at home, well, we're obviously all at home a lot at the moment. I find myself, well, it definitely happens when you're working with a lot of sweet things, but I find myself reaching for stuff in the back of the cupboards that I shouldn't necessarily be eating all day, every day. And these are kind of slightly on the healthier side, not really, but kind of have got some good bits in them as well. Kind of energy balls that you can reach for and you can snack on. And they are low FODmap in small portion sizes, which is often the case with lots of FODmap things, but we can talk about that kind of as we go on. So they're really, really simple. I am basically bunging everything into a food processor, and then we're going to roll it to balls, and we can either put it in the fridge for a week and they'll keep okay, or pop them in the freezer. So if you're like me and there's only 2 of you at home and this produces quite a few and you know you're not going to get through them that quickly, then pop them in the freezer and you can just get them out and leave them on the side for a couple of hours at room temperature, and they'll come straight back up and they'll be perfect to eat. So that is also what I'd quite like to do. So first off, we are going to put our oats in the food processor along with our pumpkin seeds. Now you're going to have to bear with me because I've got quite a small kitchen going on, so there's a little tiny space, so hopefully you can see. But I've got my oats first off that are going in. If you are following a gluten-free diet, you can use gluten-free oats, but if you are on the low FODmap diet, regular oats are fine for this. Obviously, again, I should say as a caveat, I'm not a doctor or a dietitian. I'm coming purely from experience. I use the Monash app for all my kind of data in terms of FODmap portion sizes and things like that, in terms of recipes. For my book, actually, I'll do a little shameless plug right now. All of these recipes were approved by a dietitian. I wanted to make sure that if I was getting food out there and recipes out there, that it was obviously adhered to all of the necessary standards. So you know that if you're buying this book, then all of the recipes in there are okay for the low FODmap diet, the elimination phase of the low FODmap diet. And this recipe is as well, but obviously everyone's different. You know your own tolerances, you know your own body. I'm very sort of pro everyone kind of listening and working out what works for you, I think, in terms of education and getting to know your tolerance levels and what's good for you, and sort of adapting depending on different times throughout the year, how you're feeling, how your gut's going. So that's my 2 cents on that as well. So oats have gone in, pumpkin seeds are going in. Now, because we don't want, I think with energy balls or energy bites, you don't kind of want something that's pure mush. You want a bit of texture that's in there as well. Otherwise they can kind of be a bit claggy. And nobody wants a claggy energy ball. So we're going to blitz these a tiny bit to start with, but not too much. We don't want a powder. We just want some kind of chunks in there. Now, apologies for the sound for this. I'm a big fan of the pulse setting because I think then you can control the texture of whatever you're making a lot more than if you just put it on sort of 2 or whatever I've got in my machine and you just blitz the hell out of it. I think it's always good to try and keep that pulse setting going. So we've got that in there first, and that's just kind of broken them down a little bit. You can see a tiny bit, broken them down a little bit, and then we can just add in the rest of our ingredients. So I've got peanut butter of all the nuts, and sort of in terms of low FODmap, peanut butter is kind of the lowest FODmap nut butter, I think, but it's definitely low FODmap versus something like almond butter, which is generally higher in FODMAPs. So I'm going to pop that in there as well. I've gone for smooth, but you could use chunky. I'd obviously say try and go for a good quality one if you can. Get the best quality one that you can buy. It's obviously going to have a lot more nutrition in there, and they generally tend to be less sweet as well, which I think works better for the flavour of this. We then have pumpkin puree, which I am a massive fan of. I think at this time of year, quite a lot of things that are in season, apples, blackberries, are all unfortunately high FODmap, whereas pumpkin is something that comes into season and it's delicious and it's low FODmap, obviously in certain portion sizes, but it's low FODmap. So it's something that I love to work with at this time of year. And canned pumpkin can be sort of slightly easier to get hold of than, I've got half a pumpkin over there, I'm looking at the corner of my kitchen, but it can be easier to get hold of than sort of actual pumpkins. So I'm going to pop that in there as well. Whack it in. And the beauty of the pumpkin puree as well is that it just helps to bind all of this together. So most energy bites, energy balls, bars contain dates, and dates are high FODmap. So that is a brilliant sort of addition to this. It adds a really lovely sweetness and it's low FODmap as well. So that's going in. I then am going to pop in some chia seeds, which again kind of help to bind and great for digestion as well. What else have I got in there? I've got some spices that I'm going to pop in. I was just thinking about kind of amounts and stuff. Rather than me risking getting anything wrong as I'm rambling on here, I'm going to post or I'll post the recipe on my Instagram page afterwards. so that you can see it and you can save it, and at least you've got something to go to there. So in terms of spices, I'm going to do half a teaspoon of cinnamon, because I think that's really delicious with anything pumpkin. But again, you can kind of adapt to how you would like things. We're going to do half a teaspoon of ground ginger as well. I know ground ginger can sort of, people can love or hate it. I'm going for it. If you don't like it, you can definitely leave it out. But again, it just kind of adds a bit more complexity to these. We then have a pinch of nutmeg. I have a snazzy nutmeg grinder that I got bought very kindly. I'm just going to twist it in the bottom, add a bit of nutmeg in there, do a little bit more. Perfect. A dash of vanilla extract. Again, if you can, try and get the best quality one that you can afford. I think it really, really makes a difference, and you can really notice the difference with sort of vanilla extracts that maybe aren't as nice, that are kind of full with loads of other added stuff that you just don't need. So vanilla extracts going in there, and I think we'll give this a quick blitz, and then we've got maple syrup and dark chocolate chunks to go in there as well, which you don't have to add, but I mean, we all need the extra joy, don't we, right now? So I'm all for adding some dark chocolate chunks in here as well. So I'm going to give that a really quick blitz. Perfect. So we're getting there. Chocolate chunks are going in. And then I've got my maple syrup. I'm not going to add all of the maple syrup at once, because I think depending on sort of the different ingredients that you use, you don't want to add in it all and then kind of ended up with a really sort of liquid batter. So we're going to go in with sort of half the amount, give it a pulse, see how we like it, and then carry on from there. Give that. Going with a tiny bit more. Who doesn't love maple syrup? Was I muted then? Was that okay? I just got a little notification saying that I was muted. How long have I been muted for?
Not long.
Not that long? Good, good. This is like the whole time I'm just talking to the abyss. So maple syrup's gone in. We have, actually let's get in with a spoon before I go in with my hands. Now, as I mentioned, you don't want it too wet, but you don't want it too dry either. You want it to kind of hold its shape. And I think this is about what we're looking for. So if you can see in my very glowy screen, that kind of texture. And then all you need to do is roll these into balls, pop them out on a sheet tray, actually I'd probably go sheet tray first just so they don't stick together. Pop them in the fridge, let them harden, and then they are yours to eat. And it's as simple as that. And you can kind of reach for them when you're hungry at home and you kind of want a lovely snack. You don't have to put chocolate in them, but they are delicious with chocolate. And you can kind of adapt and change them to how you'd like them. They are, I'll work out the exact portion sizes, but in kind of 2 balls portion sizes, they are low FODmap if you are on the elimination phase of the diet. And if you're not, then obviously go to town and enjoy.
Emma, can I just ask, how long do they last?
Well, about a week in the fridge, I'd say, or probably up to a month in the freezer. And I think if you pop them in the freezer, which is perfect, and I would probably tend to do that, then you can just get them out as and when you want them, and then sort of leave them for a couple of hours on the side. They'll come up to room temperature and they'll be perfect to eat. And then you're not trying to sort of panic and eat however many in a week.
Yeah, it's no good having stuff in the kitchen that you have to eat, is it?
Exactly. I mean, I'm fine with it, but I will eat it, which is the trouble. So at least if they're in the freezer, then I've got a bit more portion control, which is good.
And can you tell us what are low FODMAPs, or what are FODMAPs for people who don't know?
Yes, of course. So the low FODMAP diet is the sort of recommended diet by the NHS for people suffering from IBS. So it's very sciencey and long-winded, but FODmap stands for fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. Hopefully I got that right. So these are good. So these are these short-chain carbohydrates or sugars that are hard to digest for everyone, but if you've got IBS and a sensitive gut, then they're especially hard to digest for you. So the kind of purpose of the diet is removing these FODMAPs. There's a lot more to it, but sort of a quick overview. You remove these FODMAPs from your diet for 6 weeks, give your gut a bit of a rest. If you're feeling better, if you've got less symptoms, then it might be that, you know, it's kind of working. You kind of work with a dietitian. Should stress that this is definitely a diet that you should work, because no one wants to restrict things unnecessarily. So I would always say, chat to your GP, chat to a dietitian if you can, and obviously they will refer you, or hopefully refer you, to the low FODmap diet if they think it might work for you. You re-add those kind of food groups back in, all the different sort of FODmap groups back in, one by one, and you work out your personal tolerances. So that can last around kind of 8 weeks, I think it is, and then you kind of move on to the maintenance phase, where you kind of worked out your personal tolerances, and you kind of adapt your diet to suit you. The main thing that I always want to stress with people that get in touch and ask questions is the main aim of the game is to add in as many FODMAPs as you can back into your diet in the long term, because our gut thrives, as you well know, on diverse, delicious food. So we don't want to restrict things that we don't need to. I think some people struggle because some foods are harder to add back in. Garlic and onion, for example, are two foods really high in FODMAPs that people really struggle with. But even if you can't add them back in now, that's not to say that however long down the line your gut might be feeling a bit better and actually you can try again. So I think even if people come out at the end of the diet, obviously working with a professional, and think, oh God, there's actually quite a lot I can't eat, don't kind of lose hope. Really kind of keep working on your gut, trying to sort of, as you know, like really work on your gut microbiome, eat loads of good stuff that you can eat, and hopefully down the line it might mean that you can add in a lot more food that you couldn't sort of tolerate at the time.
Yeah, so it's a management tool, isn't it, to start with?
Yeah.
And then the aim is always to get as much back in as you can. And like you said, we're all so individual and everyone's gut are completely different. And so it's
Exactly.
a way of getting back in touch with what goes on inside me. And so actually part of that elimination phase can be learning to listen to your own gut again, which I'm sure you've had to do.
But we're all so stressed, and I think especially this year, and we're so overwhelmed that we don't kind of realize sort of what's going on in our gut. And I think it can be, I found sort of right at the beginning, and so I did the diet 5 or 6 years ago now, kind of originally, and I'm sort of on this maintenance phase, but obviously eat a lot more now than I could do in the past. And sort of you can kind of go 24 hours with really thinking about what you're eating or how you're eating, and there's so much more to it, and I could ramble forever about, yes, diet is a massive part of it, and sort of my sort of aim of my game is to try to spread the word about the low FODMAP diet, because it helped me so much, and if it could just help a couple of people as much as it helped me. But that's not all there kind of is to it. As you well know, there is so much more to it around sleep and exercise and sort of stress management, and there's so much more that goes into managing IBS. And I think the more we can talk about it, and the more we can share experiences, and the more we can sort of get resources out there, then the better.
Definitely. Also good to remember that not each day is different, and you might be fine one day and fine the next, and that might be because of its stress, or you've eaten a little bit too much of one thing or another. And to be kind to yourself is part of it, isn't it?
Oh, massively. And I think it's tricky. So on to one point, just thinking about that in terms of going on holiday, and I know that in the past I could eat so much more on holiday than I could do back here, because I was stressed, I was relaxed, my gut was having a lovely time. And I think as well, in terms of FODMAP, my big sort of takeaway to people, I hope, is that yes, of course it's important to follow the diet properly and follow it with a trained professional, but to not get too sort of focused on the little tiny grams, because if you eat 1 or 2 grams more of a certain food, obviously everyone's different, but it might not have the effect that you think it would have. So I think it's trying to look at sort of the big picture side of things. Obviously do it properly. Obviously talk to a doctor, dietitian, but go easy on yourself, and trying to sort of not get too fixated on the small things, because I think it's so easy to do. But hopefully, the more we talk about it, the more we kind of get the word out, then people know there's lots of different resources out there, and they maybe aren't so fixated on certain little bits.
Yeah, and feeling like you've got something that where you can help yourself, and like you said, part of it is being relaxed. Anything that keeps
Exactly.
you uptight is going to interfere. So being relaxed,
Exactly.
and that's almost half the battle with IBS, isn't it? Just
Definitely.
yeah.
Definitely. And I know it's not easy this year. And I think obviously all the studies have shown, understandably, that stress and anxiety is all going up. So I think now more than ever, we need to try and be really, really mindful of sort of putting in that me time, thinking about what we're eating, kind of being kinder to ourselves. Yeah, I'm definitely all here for it. I think we need to be a lot nicer to ourselves. But I think at the same time, my other kind of message is that if you do have food intolerances, then you shouldn't have to feel restricted. Obviously, the FODmap diet is a very restricted diet, and rightly so for its particular reason. But I think in terms of different tolerance levels and things like that, food can, as you all know, food can still be really, really delicious, whether it's gluten-free or dairy-free. And I think we shouldn't assume, as people with food intolerances or celiac disease or sensitive guts, that actually we don't deserve as delicious food as everyone else, because we totally do, and you can make it.
That it's the focusing on all the food that is still out there that is delicious, isn't it? And
Exactly.
often the stuff you have to cut out, it's not everything, and there is often an alternative, like you were saying with garlic. So one of the fixes for garlic is soak it in olive oil and use the olive oil, isn't it? And that there are those, and I'm sure all of that is in your book. Is that right?
Yes, that is in my book, or if not, on my website as well. I blog and obviously have a newsletter that goes out every week with loads of FODmap tips in it as well. So please do check that out. Shameless plug. But yes, also in my book. And I think there's so many things like that actually Dr. Megan Rossi talks about it in her book, and in terms of sort of her FODmap light approach. And actually there are a few sort of simple tricks that people can do, such as switching out garlic for garlic oil, onion for chives, that kind of thing, that can really make so much difference.
For sure. I mean, it's about empowerment again, isn't it? Feeling like you have a fix in your back pocket makes everything okay, and that in turn cortisol drop, and then that makes your IBS better. It's a virtuous circle, and it's interesting you talk about having your newsletter and your Instagram and having this community that people can be part of. It's so important now, isn't it, with all the restrictions that we're facing in terms of contact, having places that you can go, because having food intolerance can feel lonely.
Oh, so lonely. And I think you just it can be really, really frustrating. And I think education is so important, and it can sort of feel like you're the only one, but actually there is a whole community, as this whole festival shows, out there of people with intolerances that need sort of free from products and free from recipes. And it's just lovely to chat and kind of get to know people and learn about different experiences. And it makes the whole thing feel so much easier, so much more doable.
Can I just ask about this recipe? Is there an alternative to chia? If you either can't tolerate it, some people find chia hurts their gut, or if you don't have it.
Yes, I think you could put in flaxseed. I haven't tried it with flaxseed actually, but in terms of that kind of binder, but I do appreciate you are right. Chia can be brilliant for some people's gut, and it can sort of really make people poop, or it can go totally the other way and is not good. So I should put that in as a caveat. But it is kind of low FODmap in these portion sizes. But I think flaxseed would be a really great one to try if people can tolerate that, for sure. Or if not, the pumpkin should sort of bind it, and the maple syrup should bind it enough that actually you might not need them.
You could leave it out. So, and that's good to remember again about portion sizes. So when you're adding in FODmaps, these sort of things are perfect for adding things in, because you're only having a small amount, and so you can test it out. Have one, see how you are with it, and then have one tomorrow and see how it is. And actually, I often say things like this are perfect for reintroducing FODmaps or things that you're not.
That's so true, and trying different bits out. That's a really good idea, actually. So I hadn't actually thought about that. And putting them kind of, because you've got those kind of set portion sizes, so you know that if, as long as you've worked them out, then you know that you're not kind of going over, which is great. Because I think that's half the battle, and the reintroduction side of things is quite tricky. So can I ask him, have you followed the diet, or you obviously how did you find that it really, really helped, or not so much?
So really I have celiac I have celiac disease, and so when I originally took all the gluten out of my diet, I didn't actually improve enough for me to feel like I
Yes.
was, you know, when I was,
Yeah.
you know, before the celiac. And so
Yeah.
it was the same as you were saying. It's that endless kind of going back and forward and going, I'm not right, and they're saying it's in your head, or, you know, just
Yeah.
or whatever, and you're
Yeah.
like, no, I'm not right. And so I
Definitely.
went completely grain free and low FODmap. So I went
Yeah.
on what's called the autoimmune protocol, and that's what helped me.
Right. Yeah.
And it took me, I'd say, a couple of years to really reintroduce all FODMAPs. And even
Yeah.
now, if I eat a lot of garlic or a lot of beans, I'm, you know, there's a
You
musical
can feel it.
trumpet
Yeah.
fanfare following me.
Yeah.
But for me at this point, because my gut has healed, it doesn't mean I'm
Yes.
in agony. Whereas many
Yeah.
years ago, it would have meant being in agony. And so I think that's the
Yeah.
thing to remember, isn't it? That it's not linear, and it's not a fixed point. We are moving, adapting beings with guts
Exactly.
that respond to whatever's going on in our lives, you know.
Exactly. And I think sort of part of that as well, to think about it, is there does seem to be sort of a bit of a gap in terms of what's talked about in terms of gut health. And because actually the things that are gut health, all those kind of prebiotic rich foods actually might, or some of them are high FODMAP, so they're not brilliant for you if you've got IBS. So I think it's really important not to think about it, as you said, as this is what's going to help my gut forever, and these are the good foods and these are the bad foods, and actually thinking about your own personal tolerances, sort of really getting educated on the subject, because that made me feel so much better to kind of have an understanding of why these FODMAPs did what they did in my gut and how that worked. And sort of thinking that it's a journey. As cheesy as that word is, it's a journey. And I think it's really important to remember that it's not, just fixated in this moment. And actually, there are so many different parts that play into it. And it's important to remember that tomorrow is a new day. And if today's not working out for you, or this week's not working out for you, then there is a new day coming up.
And be patient with yourself. And often,
Exactly.
if you write down what's going on at the time and then look back at it in a month or 2 months or 6 months time, you'll see how you've improved. And one of the things that people don't remember is that you often can only see where you are at the time, and when you're
true.
It feels big, but actually you may have improved a long way.
Massively. That's so true. Yeah, very well said.
Thank you. So I just wanted to ask you about the chocolate as well. So, I mean, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because like you said, you use the Monash app, which is great.
Yeah.
You've just been diagnosed. That's great to have that on your phone. But
Definitely.
if you look on the internet, lots of people disagree about what's low fat, what's high FODMAP, and also some things that are low FODMAP can still cause people problems for other reasons. So
yes, like chilies and peppers and all of that lot.
Exactly. Or like you were saying about chia, which should be fantastic for your gut, isn't, you know, makes a nice gel, but in some people it causes a problem. And so some people have issues with chocolate because it's from a bean, but it tends to be if you eat a massive amount of it.
Yes.
So what you were saying about just a little bit of chocolate.
Definitely. And I think that seems to be a common sort of thread or whatever, that actually it is, if we, what was I watching the other day, and I can't remember, and they were just talking about in terms of the amount of bread, and actually if they had a slice of bread they were absolutely fine, but if they ate the whole loaf then they were struggling. And obviously, like, it's all to do with, I think we probably all eat probably a lot more than I know I eat, a lot more than I probably need to eat. So I think it's being mindful of those portion sizes and actually testing stuff in small amounts, and kind of going from there, and maybe not eating the whole chocolate bar, as delicious as it is, and sticking to those small portion sizes. All the whole loaf of bread. And sticking to those portion sizes, because that is sort of makes a lot of difference. And there are brilliant resources out there, and I know that low FODMAP is a tricky one. So obviously Dr. Dietitian, but in terms of King's College London in the UK has brilliant resources. The NHS has a lot on, sort of a bit on their website as well. Who else have we got? FODmap Every Day is a really good site over in the US that I look at quite a lot, because they're all approved recipes approved by a dietitian. So they're a fantastic resource, and there's quite a few out there that if you if you search for them, they're there. So I think it's obviously making sure that the information you're getting is from reputable sources. And I think it's knowing that I think it's taking it on yourself to get educated about it, and sort of actually at the end of the day, you know your body better than anyone else, and you know what works for you. So find that information, make sure that it's kind of, if it's what do you call it, qualified or whatever, and then adapt recipes and sort of information to suit yourself, is what I'd say. But I guess in terms of the recipe side of things, for me, I'll always make sure that they do adhere to that Monash data, because I think it's sort of the most reliable. And then I always say to people, but at the end of the day, you know yourself better than anyone, so adapt it, change it, and do kind of what works for you. This is what works for me, and I hope at least it gives you some inspiration, even if you'd like to change it a bit, kind of thing.
Definitely. And are those resources available on your website? Do you have a page? Do you have the resources like the Monash?
No, I don't. No, I'm working on currently kind of behind the scenes bits. But I have got an Instagram post that I put up actually with quite a few resources on the back of it that just was sort of what is the low FODmap diet, and all of the resources that I got the information from, which has quite a few links on it, which I definitely think is a good starting place to kind of research a bit more about it.
So just scroll back and find that post.
Yeah, scroll back. It says what is the low FODmap diet. It's kind of got a peach background with an orange on it, I think. And if you scroll down, you should see it, and it's a swipe along, and you can see all of the links through that.
Fantastic. And we've heard about your journey, and you're obviously incredibly knowledgeable, and your book is fantastic. And how did you get into food? Was it purely through your own experience of following the low FODmap diet?
Yeah, so I think I've always been quite greedy. I think that's a big part of it. And I came out of university and I went into the corporate world, and kind of thought, just kind of first job out of uni, you think that's where you should be, kind of in communications, and quickly realised that maybe necessarily wasn't for me in the big corporate company that I was in. So I then got a job actually at Biomarket, so looking after all their social media, which I loved, and that was brilliant. And that was an amazing way to meet so many wonderful chefs and producers that really, really cared about their produce. And you meet this French cheesemaker who was literally come over with his cheese from his family's place or whatever in France, and it was just wonderful. It was glorious. So I think that kind of, if I was already interested in food, working there just, yes, increased it tenfold. And then, kind of all the time I was blogging. And then I decided I'd like to go to cooking school. Everyone obviously does it differently. And I did the 3 months, so I didn't do the full diploma because that was slightly out of my price range. But the 3-month kind of evening school that I did, and I'm doing the second one at the moment now. So I'm doing the kind of stage 2 bit at the moment, and I loved it, and I just thought I would really like to have that kind of foundation knowledge, that even if obviously I couldn't eat half the stuff I was making, so it was making kind of soda bread and all of that lot, and unfortunately couldn't eat it, but knowing how that soda bread recipe works, obviously, as you well know, gluten-free is a completely different kettle of fish, but kind of having that understanding of, okay, this is kind of how it's sort of properly done, then how can I kind of make it work for different recipes? And then kind of went on from there and worked with sort of lots of different low FODmap brands who are after recipes and things like that, written articles for different websites and stuff, Food Network and things. So it just kind of, I love being freelance, I love food, and I love kind of not knowing what's going to come each day and stuff like that. Different projects and sort of meeting people and all of that.
Sounds like perfect qualifications for doing what you do.
Thank you. Thanks. I hope so. I think you can never stop learning, and there is so much more. I'm only just scratching the surface of food, so there's so much more I need to learn.
You always keep learning. So, and exactly. Do you have any tips for people when they're eating out FODmap free, or low FODmap rather?
Yes, that's a big one actually that I think people always ask about, and it is difficult. There are some restaurants that I know that I kind of, not that I won't bother going to, but it's a tricky one. I will obviously pick restaurants that I think are better suited to my gut. I think it's a matter of calling ahead. I think restaurants and sort of chefs, if they're given enough warning, they obviously want you to have a delicious meal. So just give them enough warning, maybe sort of call them up the day before, a couple of days before even, and just say, I'm coming, what would work? And then they've got a bit more time as well, rather than being a bit busy service, they've got a bit more time to talk to you and sort of think about what might work as well. I think obviously depending on where you are, at what stage of the diet, rather than maybe presenting them with a massive long list of all the things that you can't eat, sort of picking up the dish on the menu that you think might work best for you and saying, can I have it without gluten, onion and garlic, for example, or can I have the sauce on the side, something like that, and then you can kind of adapt it. If you can't eat I'm trying to think, a type of vegetable on your plate, then you can give it to your guests that you are dining with. So I think it's not to be too disheartened. And I think I've been to many restaurants where I've sat down and I've looked at the menu and thought, there is absolutely nothing. I'm really struggling. And I think if you think about kind of gluten-free, obviously it's come a long way. It's a lot better now. But if I think about how it was 10 years ago, even that was sort of a big, so I think we're slowly getting there, and I think awareness is definitely growing of different dietary requirements and food intolerances. I think it's being patient. I think if I'm going somewhere where I might be knowing that I'm going to eat maybe a high FODmap meal, there are certain things like onion and garlic that I just can't tolerate at the moment. But if I know I'm going to be eating a high FODmap meal, then I'll stick to kind of low FODmap foods for a couple of days before, because I'll know then that my gut's kind of on good standing, and hopefully the meal will be okay. But I think, again, be kind to yourself, be patient, know that you deserve to have a really delicious meal just as much as everyone else, but also respect the fact that it's a really busy restaurant and they're really struggling. Hopefully you'd like to think that they're doing the best they can. So trying to sort of make it easier for both sides, I think, is important.
Definitely. And having courage, because that can be one of the things, can't it, is that actually you don't want to make a fuss, but some people end up eating things they don't want to eat, but actually it's all right for you to eat what you need to eat and to ask for it.
Exactly. And even if that's saying, can I have 3 different sides actually that I can sort of put together on one plate and make work for me, I think don't think that you can't go, because they will make something work. There are a couple of restaurants I've been to that they couldn't make anything work, but they are far and few between. It was bad, but they are far and few between. And I think on the whole, everyone, obviously that's their job to make you have let you have a delicious meal, so cook you something wonderful. So I think have faith that you can that you can go and have a lovely time, and if in doubt, hopefully you've gone with lovely people and you can eat something when you go home. But I think sort of don't be afraid and just give them enough planning, talk in advance, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it should all work out.
I think that's a great point, actually, is that sometimes it's not all about the food, and it can just be about being out with other people and having something to eat before you go, and just having a little snack when you're there, and focusing on the fact that obviously now it's all a little bit different, isn't it?
Yes.
But when we're all back to normal. Oh,
my hands off. I know, so pumpkin.
Yes, I was enjoying that every time you put your palms up.
Very orange. I thought about licking it, and then I remembered where I was, and I thought, no, I can't do that.
Then you have an orange face.
Yeah, I know. I did think I've done food demos in the past where you I don't know, making pastry or something, and then you at the end of it you realise you've got flour all over your face.
I thought you just always did that to make it look like you were working hard. You just put a bit on the end of your nose like that.
Right, like battle stripes.
Exactly.
No, but I think you can definitely make it work in terms of restaurants and stuff, for sure.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Well, look,
and actually,
go on.
No, and I should say very quickly on the point of, I could talk forever in terms of food and things, and it not just being about the food. I think food plays so much more of a big role in our life than we realise, in terms of socialising and community and all of that lot. So that's another element in the many things I'd love people to think about, in terms of actually, if it is that you're only having sort of a small dish at that moment in time, hopefully kind of the company and all of that lot makes up for it, and sort of to think about the different elements rather than just solely getting fixated on the food, if that makes sense.
Or on what you can't have. Fixate on what you can have, and you'll always feel better, because looking at what is positive, it's not to deny that some of it is stressful and painful and upsetting, and there can be a kind of grief, can't there, about having to let go of things, because food is comfort. But actually looking towards what's positive, but your book, your resources, the community, all of that feels like a big embrace that actually makes life feel much better. And so those are things. Thanks. Thank you for that lovely demonstration. It was absolutely lovely to hear you talk.
I hope it was right in the end with my
Yes, I wish I could eat one. They look delicious.
Thank you.
And so where can people find you on Instagram?
So I am at She Can't Eat What across kind of all social media. And if you type in Emma Hatcher, I think it comes up as well. But definitely She Can't, and then I should pop up. And my website is called shecan'teatwhat.com. And please, I come over and say hi. I post recipes every week, and have a newsletter that goes out, so you can sign up there as well. And then obviously the book is called The FODmap Friendly Kitchen, and that is available in all lovely bookstores.
Fantastic. And you're working on another book, am I right? Or is that top secret information?
Yes, we're working. I think
Okay.
COVID's messed up quite a few plans for a few people. Yes. But we're working. Fingers crossed soon.
It's meals for one. It's what to eat when you're at home.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, look, I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and you can hang out with us as we listen to the other presenters. But you have been an absolute treat. It's really lovely to be able to hang out and have a chat.
I know, it's been lovely. I watch your tutorials all the time, and it's so lovely to actually, speak to you. It's wonderful.
Oh, well, look, we'll catch up another time.
Perfect.
All right. Okay.
See you later. Have a lovely rest of the day. Thanks.
Brilliant. Cheers then. Okay, so we have got, I'm just shuffling my papers here. I'm just really trying to make myself feel like a newsreader. That's my fantasy. So I think we've got Nora's brownies coming up, and we're going to hear from some other producers from the marketplace. And in terms of timing, I don't have this on my paperwork. I think it's 3:30. And if I've got that wrong, Margarita will come on and correct me. But otherwise, we look forward to seeing you all back here at 3:30.